My name is Huda Ahmed Ibrahim Hassan. My teachers call me Huda Ahmed. My friends call me Huda. And I am a triple threat. But I found that out after I realized that I have 3 strikes against me. Strike number 1. It was my first day of elementary school. It was my first day of kindergarten at an elementary school adjacent to my house. I was excited. I waited my whole life for this. Who's going to be my best friend? What am I going to wear? And where will my mom sit in the classroom? I soon realized that mom had to go and I had to stay. As a child, I didn't really know much about the world, let alone kindergarten. I didn't know much about the differences we all have that define our identity and how people see you. Growing up, I was surrounded by mostly family. I wasn't good at making friends because my family members were my friends. So you could imagine my excitement about kindergartners. New friends, new experiences, and new toys. I was brilliantly excited for my first official day, so I wore a cute little black dress with black shiny shoes and a My Little Pony backpack twice my size. Since the school was so close to my house, my mother and I would walk there every morning. So the first walk I had to school, I was practically running. My mother cautioned me to slow down, but my energy sped me all the way to the front entrance. The only thing holding me back was my gigantic backpack. When we arrived at the front entrance, we received our assigned classroom number 4B. When I walked into the classroom, the first thing of all things I realized was that every girl was naked. And I don't mean naked because that would be terrifying. I mean naked as in their hair was out, their ears were showing, and their necks were exposed. I looked at the children and their mothers strangely, and I received the same strange glances from them. I was confused because in my 6-year-old head, I thought, you're the naked ones. Why are you guys looking at me? I soon realized what separated me from my peers. I turned to my mother and I asked, where is everyone's hijabs? That was the day that I realized that I was a Muslim, but most importantly, different. My mother told me that we wear a hijab to represent ourselves as a Muslim and uphold our principles of modesty, which explains why we look different from everybody else. At the time, I didn't know what religion or modesty meant, but I did understand this word, different. In the first few weeks of kindergarten, I hated being different. No one wanted to be around me except when curiosity prompted the children to ask, where's your hair? I was called bald. I was called sick because I was associated with children suffering from cancer, which is really mean if you think about it. What would you do? I came up with a plan to fit in. I would beg my mom to make my hair look pretty the night before, which I regret because boy was I a tender-headed child. And if you don't know what tender-headed means, it hurt. But after all of this teasing, I began to come to school and take my hijab off. When my mother would leave, I would take off my hijab to show off to these kids, hey, I have hair. It sounds ridiculous, but as a 6-year-old child, that was my way to prove myself to the rest of my peers. Being a Muslim means hope, faith. It empowers me. It represents who I am and who I want to be. Islam gives me a higher power to turn to, a sense of hope and a fulfillment of peace. But to others, being a Muslim means terrorist, a threat. One peek at my hijab at the airport results in a random security check. I don't see it as random, and so does every other Muslim. However, I use this as an opportunity of awareness. When you see me, do I look like a menacing, evil person? Strike number 1, I'm Muslim. Now let me tell you about strike number 2. I always knew I had a dark skin tone, but I never knew how my skin tone can affect how people viewed me. It was during my elementary school years in the 3rd grade when we were covering the wonderful topic of Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad. I was the only Somali in my class, with another student who shared the similar, same dark skin tone. However, whenever the teacher would mention the words African Americans or anything remotely related to Africa, the children will shoot glances at me. I didn't think nothing of it until it began to happen more and more frequently. One glance turns into 2, then 3, then 8. I constantly wondered, why are these kids looking at me? Because it didn't feel like a good glance. The last time I received this unwanted attention was when I was in kindergarten. I would periodically adjust my hijab in case I had a piece of strand of hair out and these children were bewildered by this one strand. Trust me, it has happened before. However, I noticed that this wasn't being caused because of my outfit malfunction, but because of the constant utterance of the word African Americans. I was confused because in my 3rd grader head, I didn't understand anything the teacher was talking about. Until one day the teacher came up to me during work time and asked if any of my ancestors experienced what we spoke about in class. I looked at the teacher and I said, "Oh, that's not me. I'm not black, I'm Somali." The teacher gave me a very confused look, kind of like the way you guys are right now. The teacher turned to me and said, "Huda, you are black." This isn't when the epiphany hit me. You might be wondering why it's so hard for me to understand to consider myself as black or an African American. The answer is, I associated my race and my ethnicity differently. During the time of the civil rights movement, Somalia was undergoing the beginning stages of their ongoing civil war. My people's struggles are embedded into that event, and we were in America during the time segregation and discrimination was imminent. So whenever someone referred me as an African American, I would say, yes, I'm African, and yes, I'm American, but I'm not African American. I know it's complicated. However, throughout my cultural struggles, I realized that I am still black. I'll experience the same challenges, the same looks, the same societal discrimination as the average African American. It doesn't matter what my fellow black brothers and sisters have been through because the aftermath of it still affects every last one of us. We look the same, therefore we are treated the same. Therefore, I am 100% indisputably, most definitely black. And I'm proud to be. I shouldn't compare my cultural struggles with the African American historical struggles. I couldn't fix my color like I could fix my hijab. My hijab humbles me, and my color defines me. Being an African American means having strength, having connections with one another, obtaining a sense of unity. Being black empowers me. My skin is my armor. I use it to denounce all the judgments, burdens, and slurs thrown against me. My skin unites me with other African Americans, and I mean African Americans. In the face of adversity, we represent one group of people. So strike number 2, I'm black. Which brings me to strike number 3. Fast forward into middle school, I began to become more aware of my identity and who I was to the world. However, the last realization didn't hit me until the 7th grade when I was playing basketball on my charter school's courts. Basketball was the sport at my school, and if you didn't play it, you weren't one of us. So, out of spite, I decided one day to play against the boys. The girls at my school would usually play against each other and vice versa for the boys, and our courts were usually separated. However, one day out of spite, I decided to cross over that line, go ask the boys if I can go play with them. However, I was refused. Why? Because you're a girl. I was confused. What did my gender have to do with my ability to play a friendly game of basketball against some boys in my class. I soon realized that being a girl meant that I was more weak, more emotional, and not simply fit to play sports. This stigma of gender differences based on personality, emotions, and strength is what separated me from playing against the boys in my class because I slowly started to believe it. However, when I entered high school, I began to become more exposed to girls being a part of internships, sports, and leadership positions. This notion challenged the way I thought. So strike number 3, I am a girl. What defines me are not the strikes against me, but the power that it gives me. That's why I call myself a triple threat, an African American Muslim woman. We all now, we all have strikes. Strikes based on color, strikes based on race, strikes based on sexuality, religion, or even finances that can be used against you. What I learned through my journey is that we can change what holds us back and morph it into something that we can thrive from. I challenge you to acknowledge your strikes, embrace your strikes, and let it empower you so that you too can be a more stronger, powerful individual. You too can be a triple threat. Thank you.